Hey, Karate Kid's a great movie. It's the story of a hopeful young karate enthusiast whose dreams and moxie take him all the way to the All Valley Karate Championship. Of course, sadly, he loses in the final round to that nerd kid. But he learns an important lesson about gracefully accepting defeat. When I watch The Karate Kid, I root for the Karate Kid, Johnny Lawrence from the Cobra Kai dojo.
1984, the year of Ghostbusters, Beverly Hills Cops, A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Terminator, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Romancing the Stone, Splash, Conan the Destroyer, David Lynch's Dune, but more importantly, The Karate Kid. A classic that marked an entire generation of kung fu movie lovers like me. One of the most perfect illustrations of the 80s. It had everything, likable characters like Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi, badass antagonists like Johnny Lawrence and John Kreese, and an iconic final showdown. Although its sequels never worked as well, The Karate Kid remains one of the best things to come out of the 80s. In 2010, a reboot was attempted by director Harold Schwartz, starring Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. The movie failed to charm the audience as the original did. Jaden Smith can really act. The characters and the concept, while very 80s, did not really fit within the setting of modern China, which was probably a sign that The Karate Kid should probably stay in the 80s and should not be modernized, and especially not rebooted. But that was until Cobra Kai is a YouTube Red TV series that continues the story of the original 80s classic, this time focusing on the villain Johnny Lawrence. Decades after his loss in the karate tournament to Daniel LaRusso, he's a true loser, doesn't really have a job, lives in a shithole while Daniel LaRusso turned out to be a very successful car salesman. Johnny befriends a kid named Miguel after saving him from a bunch of bullies, and later makes him his first student, and decides to reform Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai's back, baby!
On the other hand, Daniel LaRusso befriends Johnny's son Robbie, also making him his first student to reform the Miyagi-Do karate. So the drama unfolds, all rivalries are revived, fists are thrown in, and through a perfect understanding of his strengths and weaknesses, Cobra Kai successfully crafts the perfect first season. But there are a couple of reasons Cobra Kai works as well as it does, and we are going to look into that today by focusing only on the first season. So let's talk about Cobra Kai Season 1 and nostalgia done right. The great thing about Cobra Kai is that while the reboot tried to modernize the concept of the Karate Kid, Cobra Kai said, "Fuck it, we are going back to the 80s, baby!" Which is weird because the series takes place in present day, but the showrunners still managed to make it feel like an 80s TV series, through the music choices, the way it tells its story, or even the sound effects. Even choices that appears to be simple are made specifically to fit the show. For example, anytime they use music from today, they choose artists like Bruno Mars because their music are very retro and fit the 80s aesthetic. Another example would be the actors they choose and how they dress them. Cobra Kai understands how retro its concept is and made no effort to modernize it in any shape or form, and that's exactly why it works. Every cliche, from the high school bullies with over-the-top performances, the dorks that become cool after learning a few kicks, the love triangle, or the son that gets close to his father's enemy, it's all there, but none of those drag the series down because of one key element. The series refused to define any antagonistic force. There's no bad guys to punch in the face for everything to get better. The bad guy in the series is pretty much human flaw, at least in the first season, because everyone is flawed. Everyone has done something that wasn't so admirable at some point in the series. Even Daniel LaRusso has his bad moments. He's not the great and perfect guy from the original. He feels more human in the series and a lot more relatable. The students all act like gullible kids to showcase the danger and the impact a bad teacher can have on a kid's life. and reinforces the famous quote from Mr. Miyagi that there is no bad student, only bad teachers. And which brings me to what is easily the best character in the entire series, Johnny Lawrence. When I started watching Cobra Kai, my biggest fear was that they were going to redeem Johnny Lawrence and make him a good guy too quickly in a way that would feel a bit out of character. But strangely enough, that never happened. Saying that Johnny Lawrence is flawed would be the understatement of the century. The guy is fucked up.
This guy is such a dick.
But that's what makes his character so compelling. There are quite a few people I know who consider Daniel LaRusso to be the true bully of the Karate Kid. And by a few people, I mean Barney Stinson, of course. What Cobra Kai does well is that it gives us Johnny's perspective of things, showing that he has been a misguided person his entire life. From his abusive stepdad to his abusive sensei, pain and abuse is all he's ever known, and that trauma is the reason he's never been able to do anything with his life. His trauma has also forced him to reject his own son. In fear he would mess him up and abuse him as well, until he realized not being in his son's life actually made it even worse. This is some deep stuff for a TV series feeding off of nostalgia. The show also ironically makes Daniel LaRusso's kids hang out with the type of people he hated as a kid, and I thought that was a genius move on the series' part. His son could be seen as a bit of a useless addition because he doesn't really contribute to anything, but I think he's supposed to represent that irony a bit more visually. While none of LaRusso's kids are bullies themselves, Sam, the daughter, starting off as a good person who chooses to hang out with the worst kids just to fit in, creates some really good drama. While the little boy is interested in pretty much anything his dad loves, again, allows LaRusso to kind of see the perspective of the type of kids he never truly understood. The spoiled rich kids who he couldn't relate to when he and his mom were struggling financially. On the other hand, Johnny Lawrence has to look out for a kid who is pretty much Daniel LaRusso's reincarnation. He has to step up and be the Mr. Miyagi to this kid while also being a father figure. As someone who has pushed his son away because of his own fears, he gets an opportunity to be a father figure for a kid who will not judge him for his past actions.
That kid, he's the only person in the world who hasn't given up on me.
And this is probably why the final tournament was a lot better than anything I expected. It wasn't about Cobra Kai winning the tournament. It was about Johnny realizing that winning by all means is not as satisfying as he hoped. Having his student inflict pain to his own son, adding do something he's never done before, put himself in the shoes of those he abused. For the first time ever, someone he loved was in LaRusso's position, and to some degree, he was the one hurting his own son through unethical fighting styles. This was the first time he truly saw the flaws in his methods.
Look, I know we want to win, but it's got to be the right way. We don't have to fight dirty.
This is one of the rare times where the protagonist wins the tournament, but it never feels satisfying, neither for the audience nor for our main protagonist, marking the beginning of a shift in Johnny Lawrence's Cobra Kai's philosophy. Today, there are so many series and movies using the 80s to weaponize nostalgia, and while most of them are really great, Cobra Kai is probably the only series to incorporate 80s nostalgia in present day. The time period isn't just used as a gimmick, it allows the series to navigate its extremely retro concept comfortably, all that while never forgetting to write a compelling story about real human beings with real emotions dealing with complex issues that cannot be resolved with punches and kicks. Cobra Kai is exactly what the Karate Kid needed. It's the follow-up we all deserved, because Cobra Kai takes everything everyone loved about the 1984 classic and used it to its advantage, while adding more depth to the characters we already knew and introducing interesting new characters the audience can care about and root for. Cobra Kai is nostalgia done right. Hi guys, thank you for watching. This was the first part of 2. As you can see, this part only focuses on the first season, while in the second part I'll be talking more about the second and third season. It will probably have a different title and will focus on a different aspect of the show. I don't know when it will drop, but I'm looking forward to it, and I hope to see you then. Until then, take care. Bye bye.